As she said, my presentation is called Conscious Uncoupling, How and When to Walk Away from a Career That You Just Don't Love Anymore. And maybe we've had that experience before, maybe we've seen peers go through that as well. And so I'm excited to present on this conversation. I like to start my presentations and my conversations with a small activity, a moment of reflection, just to get the gears going and to think about what we'll be talking about. So take a minute, jot down on a piece of paper, what did you want to be when you were 5 years old, when you were 15 years old, or when you were 25 years old? I think it's really interesting and telling how sometimes those threads remain the same and sometimes they change entirely. So take a minute to answer those questions. Okay, if you're anything like me, maybe those things change drastically. When I was 5, I wanted to be a scientist. When I was 15, I wanted to be a chef. And when I was 25, I wanted to be the director of an honors program. And I didn't do any of those things. But I've had a successful career that I really appreciate. And I think there's elements from all those jobs that remain with me today. And just get back to a little bit about me. I want to thank Sarah for the introduction that she gave at the beginning of this session. But to provide a bit more context of who I am and what I'm about, I have a bachelor's degree in history education, a master's degree in higher education. And like Sarah said, for 10 years, I worked in housing and residence life. And for most of those years, I thought that was going to be my job. And then I switched it up and landed the first ever alumni coordinator position for the UK College of Public Health. And I call this presentation Conscious Uncoupling because in my opinion, leaving a job is kind of like leaving a relationship. You probably think about it for a long time before you make the decision. It can be emotional, it can be hopeful, there can be tears, there can be fights. It can be a lot of things that happen in romantic relationships as well. And so many times when I've been in a work breakup or witnessed it, I thought, this is just like any other relationship. And so I think that's important to talk about. And finally, I just want to give a shout out to Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow for coining this term, conscious uncoupling. I totally stole it, and hopefully I won't have to pay for it later. All right, there are some things that I think make me qualified to have this conversation. One of them is just my core belief that what you do, your career, your job, dramatically impacts your happiness. I don't believe that you can just clock in and clock out and leave work at work. I think you take it with you consciously or unconsciously. It stays with you. The interactions you have during the day impact your interactions at night. What's on your mind during the day may be what's on your mind at night. And so because that plays such a role and plays such a part in your overall happiness, I think your job really needs to make you happy, and you need to be happy where you are and feel fulfilled where you are career-wise. Breakups. Like I mentioned before, I was in residence life, but in 10 years, I've had 4 positions and 2 employers. And to some people that might be crazy, but I'm a millennial. But I've also been a staff member, and that's pretty common for staff in particular at higher ed. They move around based on career moves, based on upward mobility, promotions, stuff like that. We don't necessarily have the same longevity that faculty have. And so it's common for there to be a shuffling of jobs and colleagues and coworkers. And in my old job, another reason why I think I'm qualified is I used to supervise students and young professionals. And on a regular basis, I talk to them about their values. What do they want out of a career? Where do they want to go? What do they want to do? So I've had a lot of those experiences. I used to teach a class about it. And again, one more time, just to remind you, I broke up with my housing and residence life career to start a new one. So I know what it's like to leave something that you really loved behind to start a new dream job and to start a new career. And so I've been there and I've done that, and I've learned a few things along the way. All right, here are some things that you can expect and things that you won't get from this presentation. We're going to explore what it means, why we love our job, why we love it romantically, what that means. We'll reflect on that. We'll reflect on, are we in the right spot? You know, should we stay? Should we go? What does that even mean? What's holding me back? But from this presentation, I'm not going to give you a final answer. I'm not going to say, yes, you absolutely should quit your job today, or no, you shouldn't. I think career discernment, career paths, employer relations, all of things are way too nuanced for me to be able to talk for 50 minutes and answer all those questions. I will give you some things to think about, but it's likely that you will leave this presentation with more questions than answers. So I'm sorry about that. So X's and O's, I like to throw in references of pop culture and music, and believe me when I say I had to fight the urge to put like breakup songs like all through this presentation just because they make me laugh. So there's a few sprinkles in here, but maybe not enough to bug you. But so when I was reading articles about why you should leave a job, what emotional things you go through when you leave a job, I ran across this quote in the Harvard Business Review, and I think it sums up this presentation really well. And it says, we no longer want just respect, security, or money from our jobs. We want passion, fulfillment, and surprise too. We want, in a word, romance. So we don't want our jobs just to pay the bills. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to love them. We want them to bring us friendship and companionship. We want it to challenge us. Like, we want things from our job that we would want from a romantic partner. And so, because of that, once you make that shift in thinking, that's why breaking up is so hard to do, especially when it comes to your job. And reasons why I think this conversation is relevant, especially right now, people are changing jobs more often, especially I think in higher ed and as staff members, like I mentioned before. Staff members have to change around and maybe work for different departments or do different positions in order to move up the chain. That's just how it works. But people are changing jobs because they want to feel fulfilled. And so they're recognizing earlier on that maybe this isn't the right fit for me and maybe I need to do something else. And people are working longer than they have in the past too, because when they do find something that they really enjoy, they stick with it. But another thing is the workplace is changing more often, and because of that, it's setting this set of dominoes down the road, where if your workplace changes, does that create jobs? Does that make you want to leave? Is it forcing you to leave? I'm sure we've all realized even just this year, our workplace has changed tremendously. And so those are a lot of layers to be thinking about. And loyalty to your job isn't what it used to be. It used to be 50 years ago, you got retirement and you got a promise that you're going to be with this company or this department or college forever. They were going to take care of you. And there's not that as much security now, so there's not as much expectation for loyalty. And then finally, I think that it's a giant elephant in the room, honestly. People want to act like moving around from one job to another is just a chess game. It's just one move to another, but these are relationships and this is your life. And so there are some emotional pieces that go with that. And so to act like that's not happening is selling ourselves short. All right. So we're going to talk about the one. Why do we love our job? We have fallen in love with it. So take a moment to reflect. What made you apply for your current position? And what has made you stay? Do you remember what that was like? Do you remember this is going to help me get to this goal? Or I'm going to be working with incredible people? What made you apply for your current position? And take just a minute and remember those feelings and what your motivations were. And Sarah, this might be a good time for us to allow the audience to talk a little, if you want to assist with that.
And If anyone would like to contribute to the conversation, please go ahead and raise your hand and I can unmute you. We have someone. I will unmute you, Allison.
So yeah, I applied for my current job because it looked like it was a way to take what I had been doing, but do it at a higher level with more responsibility. And it looked very interesting and like I'd be working with good people. And honestly, the reason I've stayed at my current job as long as I have is that I really like the people I work with. I'm not just saying that because I work with Jillian, but
It's totally because she works with me.
I really like the team and the sort of sense of shared purpose. So, and I think those things are really important. But I also think that sometimes the thing that gets left out of job conversations is that we do work for money. And it almost feels like it's taboo sometimes to say, why did you apply for your current position? And it's also because I could make more money. And it feels strange that this, when we talk about jobs, sometimes we don't talk about money. And I understand why people don't in their very first job interview with someone. But I think as women, maybe we need to break that taboo as well.
I agree. Thank you for bringing that up. We're actually going to talk about that in a few slides, so I think that's an excellent point.
We also have a comment from Mary.
Sure.
She said she took her position because it was a step up with the incredible coworkers, but now it's 10 years later and I don't know if that's enough anymore. But I do hesitate to leave incredible people, a bird in the hand.
Yep. And that's another excellent point that we're going to talk about in a minute. And it's hard to weigh out all those options. That's completely valid of like, is what I have good enough? Where I have this stirring that maybe I should do something else, but what matters? What is the tipping point? And so those are all really valid questions that we're going to talk about in a minute. And just to be funny, what made you apply for your current position? Because I love to travel and I love to plan events. So thanks, COVID, for not allowing me to do either one of those things. So here we are. Thank you for those that contributed to that conversation. You brought up really good points. All right. So Allison hit on this a minute ago. Why do we love our jobs? Why have we fallen in love with our job or our career, and what has kept us from leaving? And so, both of our commenters hit on these things. So number one, I think identity. We find identity in our jobs and the work that we do. So many of us, when you say, "Who are you?" one of the first words that you rattle off is your current job. I'm a teacher. I'm an advisor. I'm this, I'm that. And so identity gets wrapped up in that. There was a 2014 Gallup poll that said more than half of workers in the United States define themselves based on their job. And they've been doing that since 1989. And I think that might even be higher now. But our jobs reflect what we care about, what we put into the world, who we are. And so it can be kind of scary when you start stripping that away. If I'm not a teacher or an advisor or something, then who am I? What other identity roles fill that up? I think there's some comfort too. We love our jobs. We love comfort, but comfort's also a reason why we stay. Who doesn't love their favorite pair of sweatpants and an old cardigan? We love what's comfortable. There's some comfort in, I know my job. I've been doing it for a long time and I'm good at it. There's some comfort in that. Anxiety keeps us from leaving. It's scary sometimes to think about even putting yourself out there, even looking for a job, interviewing for jobs can be very anxiety inducing. It even can be anxiety inducing to have that conversation with your supervisor that says, I'm thinking about leaving, or even writing that resignation letter is too scary. So we just stay where we're at. And we have those bonds. We love our coworkers. How many times have you said, or have I said, my coworkers are my family? I love them. They're my best friends. You do life with your coworkers, especially in pre-COVID times. Like we were spending so much time together. On a good week, you're together for 40 hours. Most of the time, it's probably more than that. And when you have coworkers and colleagues for a long period of time, like you're witnessing together, like marriages and births and divorces and graduations and all kinds of benchmark life events that that these things happen when you're together. And so, or when you're working on major projects, you've done life together. And so it's hard to leave those things behind. And then there's guilt. You know, that's important to recognize. There's guilt. I do so much work. Who's going to take my place? They're going to have to hire 2 people to do the work that I do. We've all probably thought that before. Or timing. Now is not a good time for me to leave my job. There's a lot going on, or school's about to start and all the students are going to be back on campus, so I'll leave when that's over. There's not ever really a good time to say goodbye. And so these are all the things that kind of keep us where we're at. But when you start thinking about, okay, I've got this stirring feeling down in my gut that says, I think it might be time for me to go, but I don't know if it's me. Is it the bird in the hand, bird in the bush kind of thing? Is it just me? Am I overreacting? Or is there something going on that's beyond me? Is there something that maybe me and my job could work on together? Is it me? Is it you? Is it us? So we start weighing out these options. And so I think this was really telling. It says, the moment you want to do something of significance, the chaotic elements in your universe band together to stop you from facing your dragons and realizing your potential. So how many of us have felt like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this leap. I'm going to make a big change. And it feels like the whole universe is saying, no, hold your horses. No, you're not. And sometimes that talks us out of moving forward at all, because we've convinced ourselves that the universe thinks it's a bad idea. But what does the universe know, really? So we have this, it's not you, it's me. It's not my job's fault, it's just me. It's got this stirring in my soul. So we have this argument of the head versus our heart versus our gut. You know, my head wants to be logical and say, you've got a good job, it pays for your bills, you've got great benefits, what are you doing? And then you've got your heart saying, but I want to be creative, or I just feel this stirring that I need to be doing something else, or I want a promotion. But what I find is your gut is consistent. Your gut will always say the same thing, and it'll be persistent. So even when your head and your heart are battling it out, your gut will be that silent voice that keeps saying the same thing over and over and over again. And so if you're having that battle, I suggest that you listen to your gut. But there are other questions that you need to be asking yourself if you haven't already. And if you have got that stirring in your soul that maybe it's time to go, make sure that these things aren't happening. Are you reacting to just a bad coworker? You know, did a snarky email hit you the wrong way and you thought, okay, I'm done. It's time for me to go. Don't let these people fool you. That's not a good way to leave. It's not a good reason to leave, because the chances of you having another annoying coworker somewhere else are pretty high. And so don't just quit. Don't let them have the upper hand. Take this as a learning opportunity for you to, okay, how do I deal with people who press these buttons? Or are you feeling burnout? Is that why you feel like you might want to leave? Because burnout can come from a lot of things. It can come from your job, but it can come from a lot of external sources too. Maybe there's things going on at home. Maybe there's things going on with your school. Maybe you're in school right now and you just feel like you're burning the candle at both ends. That might not be the reason to quit the job. That might just be a good opportunity for you to re-energize. Are you just having a moment of temptation? I've been there. Sometimes you'll get on higher ed jobs and you'll be like, oh my gosh, my dream job is at the beach. I gotta apply. Like, what other option do I have? Or you'll see someone that you know just got a killer job somewhere and you think, oh, if they are job searching and doing really well, I need to be job searching and doing really well. And so again, this is something I say all the time. Comparison is the thief of joy. So don't let someone else's upward mobility or changing jobs influence you, and don't be impatient. Another thing for you to think about is, are you looking for your job to fulfill all of your needs? So if you have a need to be creative and a need to be flexible, a need for autonomy, a need for, X, Y, or Z, are you expecting your job to fulfill all of those things? Or can you find those outlets somewhere else? I want you to think about that. I purposely made the font on this really big because this is a big point. Because so many times we want our jobs to be our everything. And if it doesn't check all 10 boxes, then it's maybe time for us to leave. And sometimes that's not the case.
Jillian, we did have one question for reacting to a bad interaction. Mm-hmm. What if it's your sole supervisor?
And I think that's tricky when it comes to your sole supervisor. Because your supervisor, just like if they were your in-laws, they can really impact your relationships with your peers, your coworkers, and your day-to-day. And I think there's a lot of avenues that this can take with it. You have to think about, okay, is this going to stop me from moving on? What role does this person play in me moving on in my career? What kind of impact am I going to let them have? What can I accept? What can I change? And so like I said, I don't think that's a cut and dry saying, yeah, your boss is awful, you should leave. But I do think that could be one of the reasons to leave, especially if it's really bad. Because I think hoping that your boss changes it may be an empty wish, and that's really sad and unfortunate. But thank you for that question. But moving on, these are two questions that I used to ask my students and the people that I supervise all the time. What do you want in a career, and what do you need in a career? And so Allison brought this up a minute ago about salary. You know, is there a threshold that you need to make? Is there a certain amount of money that you need to make to live the way you want to live? And if that's the case, that is okay. That is entirely okay. You know, what I need to be creative. I need to be around people. You know, what are those things? And I make sure that you know the answers to those questions, because when you do, you can filter out all the other noise. When you get on higher ed jobs and you're job searching, if they don't provide you with the things that you want and the things that you need, then they don't matter. They're not even worth you applying for. And so this helps you decide, should I stay? Should I go? If I do go, what is that? And so there's this activity that I used to do with my students. And so this is a very shortened version of it. And so we'll take a few minutes. I'm trying to keep an eye on time. But these are just like a collection of words that can describe your role in your job. There's 12 of them up there in no particular order, no particular grouping. But think about, okay, if you had to get rid of 4 of those things, which 4 would you get rid of? And then if you got rid of 4 more, what would you get rid of? And so then hopefully what you're left with is maybe your top 2 things that are absolutely important. And so, and none of these words or descriptions are any more important than another one. So like I said, being creative or wanting to collaborate with others is no more important than saying, I need to make a certain amount of money and it has to be in Lexington because that's where my family is. And so I encourage you to jot down these words. And then when you have time, take a minute and just start crossing them off. What are you willing to sacrifice? What is most important? And so you may get lucky and find a position that gives you all of these things and more. You might not, but if you know what is the highest rank, what's your number 1, what's your number 2, then your job search is a lot easier. So I'm going to give you all a minute to, if you want, take a screenshot or jot down these words. Does anybody know what their top word would be? You can throw that in the chat and Sarah can help me out, or you can answer out loud if you want.
We had purpose,
yeah,
anatomy, location, and purpose again.
Yeah, and purpose comes up a lot. And when I talked about before, it's like people are, that's one of the reasons why they're job searching, is because they want to align who they are and their purpose on this planet with their job. And so that's absolutely a reason to job search or to stay, or a reason to keep staying. And one of the things I want to encourage everybody to think about is think about where you want to be 2 jobs from now. And what do you need to get there? And what does that look like? So part of this whole conversation is doing a lot of reflection on who you are, what you want down the road, and then what are the steps to get there. Thank you, everybody who chimed in. All right, so maybe you've done all the self-reflection and you've answered all those questions and you're like, maybe it's the job. Okay, at the end of the day, it's so much easier to blame the job for why you want to leave. Maybe they're not giving you work-life balance the way you want. Maybe they're not paying you enough money. Maybe you've hit the ceiling on growth and there's no opportunity for you to move up. Or it's a bad location and you feel the need to move. One of the big things that I really encourage everyone who is thinking about job searching to start paying attention to what's happening in your field. So we're all in higher ed. So read university emails, even when they're long. Read all the attachments, see what's going on in the world. Try to read between the lines. What does this say about the status of my university or the status of higher ed? Read the Chronicle of Higher Ed. Read Inside Higher Ed. See what's going on in the world, because that gives you a better picture of where you're at, what's doing well, what's not, even universities that are doing well and universities that aren't. It gives you just a better understanding and more information to make a decision on. And then it could just be us. So there could be this, you say, okay, I have to stay because of the pay and because of the location. Those are my number one and number two things. But I still wish there was something more. And so this is an opportunity for the us. And so I've seen this bloom where you are planted quote on signs, on bumper stickers, on all kinds of things. And sometimes it can be read as resignation, like just accept where you are and deal with it and try to make the best out of a bad situation. But I think it can actually be pretty positive and it can bring a lot of opportunity. So you often have more power than you realize to make the change you need right where you are. And so many times we just assume that our boss or our boss's boss doesn't care about our growth, about our career plans, because they never asked. And that's not always true. A lot of times they do care, they just don't know that you care. And so it's important for you to start having those conversations. And so if you have that opportunity, have a conversation with your supervisor and say, these are the kind of skills that I want to have, or these are the kind of experiences I want to have. And where can I fit them into our department's goals or our college's goals? So there may be an opportunity for you to get what you want. And for you to find a way to be satisfied where you are if leaving your job or leaving your university isn't possible. All right. So we've done all the soul searching, we've asked all the questions, and you're saying, okay, I know for sure it's time for me to go. What does that even look like? And so this is one of the times I throw in some pop culture. Thank You, Next by Ariana Grande. Love that I've lost, but that's not what I see. Look what I've got and look what you've taught me. So think about all the things that you've learned from this presentation, but in your career from others, and take that moving forward. And so you're back on the market. Some things that you're going to need: patience. Job searching can take a long time, especially if you're number one and number two, or location, or money, or something like that. It might take a while for your dream job to match up, to become available, to match up with all the things that you need. So you may be in this for the long haul. You may need some resilience, because sometimes we put our heart and soul in a cover letter because we have found the dream job and we apply and nothing happens. And it's like a punch in the gut because we thought our life was about to change. Or maybe we go on job interviews and nothing happens. We don't get the second interview, or we don't line the job up. And so it's important that you have some patience and some resilience, and that you're able to focus on, okay, this is where I want to be, and this is what I want to do, and these are all the things that I need to do to get there. These are the skills that I need to have. This is the practice that I need to have interviewing, that you remain focused. And that you have confidence. For women in particular, women are way less likely to apply for jobs unless they have 100% of the job responsibilities, unless they can do all the things that it asks for. And we're just selling ourselves short. honestly. We forget about transferable skills. That's something that we preach to students, but we don't take it seriously ourselves. And so transferable skills matter, and they can be marketed the right way. And so think about those things. Think about the huge, big picture of all the things that you've done, and have some confidence in that, because you're awesome. I landed my job because of transferable skills. Clearly, I went from residence life to alumni affairs, not the same thing, but so many threads that carry through both positions. And so have some confidence in yourself. And when you leave, make a succession plan. You know, these are some of the things that you can do to leave with grace, because it eventually will happen. You're on the job market, that dream job will come along and you'll land it and it'll be great. But then, okay, now I'm really doing the breakup. I've talked about it, I've made the plans, but I'm leaving now. What does that look like? And so make a succession plan. And what that means is reflect on everything that you've done. This is really much for you as it is for your employer, because it gives you time to reflect on everything that you've done, everything that you've accomplished, all the processes and procedures that you've put together, and it sets them up for success. And it helps you make a clean break, because sometimes we don't tie up all these loose ends, and your old boss is still calling you saying, where did you put that file? Or where are these things? But if you put a plan together, you can walk away. Take some time to say goodbye. You know, the last time you send an email, the last time you take a walk on campus to grab a coffee, the last time that you go to a staff meeting. Take some time to say goodbye and honor those memories and be thankful for them. Thankful for the lessons that you learned, the skills that you've gained. Be thankful for your references who have helped you land a new job. And feel the feels. As much as I hate to say that, but there's going to be some emotions. Maybe not on your last day. It could be like, hey, good riddance. It was good while it lasted and I'm out of here. Or it could be a lot of tears. Or, you know, what happens with me is I don't get emotions till a month later when I bump into an old coworker and I'm like, oh, we used to do this together and now I'm sad. And so it's okay. You can recognize those things and then let them go. And then on the flip side, I don't regret it. I've known people who sent in a resignation letter and then immediately said, just kidding, I really didn't mean that. Can I take it back? And so trust your gut. Don't do that. It's a bad look. Don't get angry about being replaced. People are replaceable. And I had a mentor tell that to me, you know, so long ago, and it really put things into perspective. And another thing that was always said to me is your no can be someone else's yes. So you may be walking away, but that might be someone else's dream job. And so you're creating that opportunity for someone else. And sometimes we get miffed, like it's like an old boyfriend got a new girlfriend, and you automatically don't like them just because they're the new you, even though you are the one that ended that relationship. Sometimes it happens. And so I've even been that way, where someone who got my old job and they start changing the things that I did or things that I made. And you just got to let it go. Don't be mad about being replaced. And don't burn bridges. That seems obvious, but in higher ed, it just seems like it's a giant shuffleboard. And it's a chess game, and people are moving around all the time. And so you may have worked with somebody in a different state, and all of a sudden they're your colleague, or all of a sudden they're your supervisor, because things just shuffle around. And people change. I've had coworkers that maybe we weren't on the best terms 10 years ago, and then we worked together again, and we became really close. And so things change, people change. Don't burn your bridges. Even though you may want to say, this has been the worst job of my life and I can't wait to leave, leave with a smile on your face and have some grace. All right, so I've thrown a lot of stuff at you. There's a couple more things that I want to talk about, and I wanted to make sure that we had time for questions. So there's some final thoughts. And so one of the things that I wanted to leave you with, thank you, Cher. Do you believe in life after love? I do. You will love again. You may be in love with your job now, but you will love the next one and the one after that, if that time comes. So I want you to jot down these questions, take a screenshot or jot them down. So it's your take home. This is your homework. I really encourage you to have a good cup of coffee and answer these questions. Is my work aligned with my values, interests, and goals? When I talk about who I am and what's important to me and what my passion areas are, is that happening at work? Can that happen somewhere else in my life? Are my skills being utilized? When I look at the progression of my role or my field, how do I feel? So if I were to be promoted tomorrow, how would I feel about that? If I were to become the director or the provost or, fill in the blank, would that make me excited? Would that make me feel like I'm full of dread? What kind of emotions does that give you? Are there opportunities I could work on in my current role that interest me? So if you may be feeling a little complacent, are there other things you can work on or things that you can change? All right. And it's the end of the road. Thank you, Boys to Men, for this classic reference. Breaking up is hard to do. And so I may have talked about this. We're going on 41 minutes, but I did not cover everything. It is so nuanced and there are so many layers to, being in a relationship with your job, deciding whether or not you should end that role in job search. It's hard. And I'm never going to act like it's not. But I encourage you to be clear about who you are and what you want, because I promise you that will make your decision much easier and it'll make your job search much easier. I encourage you to challenge your assumptions about what's possible. And so that can mean what's possible in your current role or what's possible for you down the road. You may think you already have everything mapped out, but do you? I don't know. Focus your actions to create change. So, focus your action and have the courage to make the changes if you feel like that's necessary. Don't be afraid. And again, it's not on the screen, but comparison is the thief of joy. Don't get caught up comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges. This is your life. None of the situations are exactly the same. So this is about you. So don't worry about what anybody else is doing or anybody else's career path.